Welcome back. This is part 2 in our video lecture series on using verbs. Before we were talking about some basics of subject-verb agreement, how you conjugate it, what it is, some different noun types, things like that. So now we're going to go into a little bit more detail about how we avoid errors with subject-verb agreement and what that looks like. So the first tip I have is to read aloud. I know it sounds really simple, but most of the time just reading your sentences aloud will help you catch most subject-verb agreement errors. So let's say you have the sentence, love are good. Well, when you read that aloud, you're going to know that doesn't sound right. You're going to know that maybe I should go with love is good instead. Even if you don't know the full grammatical reason for it, go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and correct it and go with what sounds right. And if on the off chance that what you think sounds right or is wrong, then I'll make a note of it on your papers. Another thing to do is to ask questions. So you want to ask who or what is the focus of this sentence and what is the subject doing or being. That will help you locate the subject and the verb so that you can know how to put them together. It might help you to circle or underline the answers to make sure they agree, and this is especially helpful when words come in between the subject and the verb. Sometimes you'll have a prepositional phrase that will come after the simple subject, and will kind of, maybe the object of the preposition ends in an S, and that can throw things off. So it can be really helpful to underline the focus of the sentence and the verb, and then to make sure those two agree and just ignore the words in between. So here's an example. The goal of the new laws is to improve air quality in the sentence. Well, the simple subject here is goal. The goal is to improve air quality in the city. If you were to look at the word right next to the verb, laws, you would probably want to make this are. That would be incorrect. It's not the goal, the new laws are to improve air quality of the city. And if you read that aloud, you're going to see that that doesn't quite work. It doesn't sound right. The complete subject is the goal of the new laws, and we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. But the simple subject is goal, and so since this is the subject and this is the verb, you want these two to match. You can also use the pronoun replacement test. I really like this test. I find it really helpful for trying to figure out where the subject is, especially the complete subject, especially when there's a lot of words in that subject. So the idea is that if you can replace the complete subject with a pronoun, such as he, she, or it, the subject is singular. If you can replace the complete subject with they, then that means that the subject is plural. So let's look at the same example. The goal of the new laws is to improve air quality in the city. It is to improve air quality in the city. The goal of the new laws is the subject of the sentence, and I accidentally hit a button. So since you can replace the goal of the new law with it, that means the subject is singular, and is the proper verb there. So subjects with multiple words, let's say we're looking at a sentence like attending schools has taught me a lot. Well, schools is plural, so it's tempting to write attending schools have taught me a lot. But that would actually be incorrect, and you can hear that it sounds wrong. But we can use the pronoun replacement test to go into more detail on that. So attending schools has taught me a lot. So replace it with it. It has taught me a lot. The complete subject equals attending schools, which equals singular. That means that has, not have, is the correct verb there. So that's a really good way to kind of help you figure out what the subject is and how to make it agree. You can even use it with simple subjects if you're not sure. If you're saying, I don't know whether the cat walks is singular or plural, you could go it walks. Or if I don't know whether the dogs eat is singular or plural, you could go, okay, is it eat? Or they eat. Yeah, they eat. So that's a good way to kind of help you figure out what words to use and how to make these agree. So we're going to talk a little bit about tense shifts as well. This is kind of the next subject. We're moving away from subject-verb agreement. And now we're honing in on those verbs. So what are tense shifts? Well, tenses they indicate time. They indicate when something happened. And we have an unusual number of tenses in English. Most languages maybe have 3. We have 12 main tenses and then some others on top of that that aren't counted as often. We have a lot. So we have a lot of different variants in time. So you have your simple tense. So if something is happening or happened, it's complete. So simple past, this happened. Simple present, it's happening now. Simple future, it will happen. We also have things like perfect and progressive that we're not going to go into that show different shades of that meaning. A tense shift is when you switch from one tense to another. And so here's more on tenses indicating time and some of the very, very many tenses that exist here. And so we're not really going into those, but I wanted to show you that they do exist in case you want to go into more information about them. So when you change tenses in a sentence or a paragraph or even in an essay, it's called a tense shift, and they can be very confusing to readers. The easiest thing to do is just to choose a tense and stick with it. If you want to write in present, write in present. If you want to write in past, write in past. So let's look at an example here. So during the movie, Sam stood up and then drops his popcorn. Well, stood is in past tense and drops is in present tense. So we want to make them match. During the movie, Sam stood up and then dropped his popcorn. Both are now in past tense. During the movie, Sam stands up and then drops his popcorn. Both are now in present tense. So we just need to make them match, just be consistent with our tenses. So dealing with tense shifts, what are some tips on that? So the first one is just like the first one for subject-verb agreement. Read aloud. You'll more than likely catch places where you switch tenses. They'll sound awkward. They'll sound weird. Something won't sound right. And you can go back and look at it and fix it from there, even if you don't 100% know why. The next thing is to choose the tense that makes the most sense. If what you're talking about is something that happened in the past, well, you're actually probably going to use past tense, right? So just use past tense. If it's something that's happening right now, then you're more than likely going to use present tense. So just use present tense. And the other thing is to kind of look for the dominant tense. So normally you're going to choose one tense. One tense is going to feel more natural to you than another. So as long as it makes sense, just use that one and just go back and change the ones that don't match. This is something that you will occasionally have errors on. I do too. And it's one of those things that it would not be realistic for you to be 100% writing in the right tense all the time. Professional writers don't do it anyway. This is why we edit and proofread. We go back and we fix these things that happen. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a writer. He's a published writer, and he was saying, you know, I wrote the first half of this chapter completely in past tense and the rest of the book in present tense, and I have no idea why I did that, but I had to go back and fix it, and, you know, it's, God, 60% of writing is editing, and it's true. And so, I mean, even with professional writers, we still have to go back and proofread, and we still have to go back and look for these things. So you're definitely going to want to learn to take that step, use these tips, because we do take off points for them, but you can always go back and fix it, and that's really what you should do. So I think that takes us to the end of this lecture. So that's all on verbs for this week. Next week we're going to talk a little bit more about nouns, and in a few minutes I'm going to have the composition lesson for this week up as well. So have a good day, and I'll see you again soon.